At the beginning of my career, I had the good fortune of having someone who was exceptionally powerful as a salesperson, as a mentor. I've spoken to this individual every week for the last 15 years. And he is somebody that has sold over 100 homes a year for a decade, 200 deals a year, multiple years in a row, over $5 million in gross commission income, has a net worth of over $34 million. He's just a real estate agent. And this is somebody that I've had the good fortune of speaking to over an extended period of time. And I remember at the beginning of my career, I called him very frustrated. I went on an appointment, somebody made an objection, and I just froze. And what came out of my mouth was like verbal vomit, right? And I don't know about you guys, drop in the chat if you've ever walked. As you're walking out of the appointment, you're like, what the hell was that? I know that happened to me. I know that's happened to Jose. Hell yeah.
Big time. Multiple times.
Multiple times. And as I'm walking out, I'm like, what the hell is that? So I'm really frustrated. So I have him on the line. He's like the bat line, and I call him up immediately. Same way Jose used to call me when he would go on appointments. I called him up immediately, and I was like, hey, man, here's what happened, and here's what I said. And he could hear in my voice that I was really frustrated. So what he said to me completely changed the trajectory of my career. He said, Aaron, let me ask you a question. I said, sure. He said, how often were you practicing and role-playing that particular objection? I said, well, I haven't really that much. He's like, okay. And how many more times do you think that objection is going to come up in your career? I said, probably a bunch. So he's like, it's just tuition to the game. I said, what do you mean tuition to the game? He's like, well, it's just tuition to the game, meaning you have to learn, right? And that was a learning experience for you. I said, okay, makes sense to me. So he's like, what we're going to do now is we're going to role play this so that never happens again. And here's what's interesting. If that would have happened to you, let's say 20 more times in your career, and now, because you know the answer, that's never going to happen again, you just saved yourself $200,000. It's a $200,000 mistake, and you're never going to do it again. And then we commenced to role play. And from that day forward, I made a decision that my skills and what to say and how to say it, and being able to handle these objections that come up moment to moment as we're having conversations with regards to real estate, that was never going to be a reason why I wasn't able to take advantage of opportunities. So what I commenced to doing is I commenced to role playing twice a day, 6 days a week for 3 years. I would handwrite out the listing presentation by hand, right? Each and every day. I would record myself doing presentations, right? I would specifically role play with people and have them just throw objections at me, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And after spending that time, I no longer am concerned about what's going to come up during a presentation or any objections that are going to come up, because I know what to say and how to say it. And since that time frame, that has allowed me to be able to not only sell real estate in high volume for myself, but also to teach others how to do that. So I believe that everybody in this call right now, with the right roadmap, the right skills, and the right approach as far as how to handle these objections, can accomplish anything that me and Jose have, if not more, in the business. And I've spent, as I mentioned, the last 17 years of my career selling over 2,000 properties, 100 homes a year for 10 years in a row. I did 200 deals a year twice. 80% of that business is listings sold. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go over 3 things. The first is we're going to go over mentally how you should be thinking about an objection, because I do believe that most people go about that process in a way that doesn't really serve them that well. Just to reframe what an objection actually is and how you what is going on with you internally and emotionally when they come up. The second thing we're going to go over is how almost every single objection, we think that there's a myriad, an unquantifiable amount of objections out there that we have to prepare ourselves for. What you're going to realize after we go over this is that there's really only 3, and all of them are just variations of the same thing. Okay? And then the third thing we're going to do is me and Jose are going to do some live role play. right? Of the common objections. Like, I want to think it over, like, I want, how much is the commission? Like that sort of thing. We want to talk to another agent, right? So that way you can be equipped with real, tangible, practical skills that you can go out into the marketplace and utilize to help you to earn income. If anybody's up for this, drop in the chat. Drop in the chat with a hand up or a fire if you are up for this, because it's about to go down. Now, keep in mind, whenever you come to any Elite Builders events or learning experiences, this is the good shit, not the bullshit, okay? We are going to give you tangible, practical tools that you can use in your business to help you to make more money, okay? So what are objections? What are they actually? And what I've learned is that objections are just unanswered questions in the minds of the consumer. And what I want you to realize is that if they weren't interested, they wouldn't be asking you the questions. So if they weren't seriously considering hiring you, they wouldn't ask you how much is your commission. They wouldn't ask you, what are you going to do to market my property? So instead of internally having lots of tension and anxiousness over it, what should really be going on in my mind? I should be really excited when people object, because it's an indication that they are actually considering hiring you. Because if they weren't considering it, they wouldn't have asked. They would have said, okay, great, nice to see you, Jose. And you would have walked out the door and that would be it. But when people say to Jose, hey, Jose, I had this other person over here and they said they were going to do this. What are you going to do to market my property? That's an indication they are considering hiring Jose for the job. If they say, hey, you know what, Jose, really liked everything you said. At the same time, I want to talk to you about the commission. What does that mean? That means they're considering hiring you for the job. So instead of internally having tension, internally having fear, internally like kind of tensing in anticipation for pain, instead, the emotion that should be coming up is excitement. It's like, ooh, man, they're getting ready to do something. Oh, man, they're strongly considering it. It's kind of like if you ask somebody out and they're like, well, where would we go? Doesn't fucking matter if you weren't considering it. So the fact that you asked me where would we go means that you're considering it. Okay? And I know for me at the beginning of my career, I used to perceive, right? Because we can only view things through our concepts, right? And if our concepts mentally are off, that means our conclusions will be off. So I used to perceive objections as like these like battlegrounds, like, it's time to fight, right? And instead, what I learned over thousands of attempts is like, oh, no, this is actually a really good thing. This means that we're progressing. We are moving towards and progressing towards an actual sale happening or somebody actually hiring me. Okay? So what is the track? So that's the first thing. One is like, in your mind, what is the actual objection? It's just an unanswered question in the mind of the consumer. It's not something to get freaked out about. It's not something to, go suck your thumb about. It's something to be like, okay, great. That means you're considering hiring me. So now it's my time to answer it. And if I answer it effectively and efficiently, then I will be hired for the job. Okay? So when somebody objects to you, first we want to acknowledge the objection. And that's different from agreement. So let's talk about that, Jose. For you, because I know we've worked on this a lot, how is acknowledgement different than agreement?
I would say acknowledgement is more like really hearing what they're telling you. And instead of saying, I would say like just acknowledging, like, I understand where you're coming from. I get why you would feel that way. That sort of thing, basically. That's
exactly right. So there's some key phrases, right? So if Jose says to me, man, that commission's really high. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I acknowledge what he said to me, but did I agree with him? No. Right? So acknowledgement is different than agreement. Some people try to blow right past it like it didn't even happen or they didn't even hear it. No, that's not the way to do this. You definitely want to acknowledge it. And there's some key phrases and I want you to write them down. That makes sense. Or I see where you're coming from. Or I understand. What are you going to do to market my home? Well, I appreciate you asking that. And it really makes sense that you do ask because you want to make sure that I'm going to do everything possible to ensure that your property gets the most traffic and you ultimately end up selling it for the most amount of money. Is that right? Well, yeah, that's right. Okay, great. So I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you with regards to the marketing plan. My question to you is if we can come to an agreement in terms of the marketing plan, do you think there'd be any other reason why we couldn't proceed and get started today? So I've acknowledged, and then I set that aside, right? Because oftentimes we want to go about handling objections when we don't even know that there's objections underneath that are behind it. And there's a track that you can follow. So one of the ones that you hear all the time is, hey man, your commission's too high. So follow this track. You ready? Listen, I see where you're coming from. Acknowledgement. Number 2, naturally, you want it to be less. Obviously, I want to earn your business. So typically what we do in these situations, Jose, is we have a conversation in terms of the professional fee and how it's a tool to market the home. And we'll go over the strategies that you have because I want you to feel comfortable with the one we end up choosing. And I promise you this, that won't be a reason why we don't do business. I'm sure we'll come up with something that's mutually beneficial to all parties. And my question to you is if we can come to an agreement on the professional fee, do you think there'd be any other reason why we couldn't proceed and get started today? So what I just demonstrated to you is all of those things put together. One is acknowledgement, not agreement. I use the key phrases, I use the track, and then I set that objection aside. And if Jose says to me, like, no, like I think we're pretty good. Like once we can agree on that, I think we can move forward. Excellent. And now I'll say something like, well, what were you thinking? And the reason why we're doing that is because now we're negotiating and I want you to speak first. So there's a very specific track. And what's so interesting is Jose shared with me early on in his career, because unbeknownst to most, because they look at Jose now with all of his followers and his, his cute little haircut and all that other stuff. And they say, man, he's always been that way. Nope. He went on like 100 listing appointments and took 20 listings.
5.
And he didn't know how to do this. And I remember specifically him learning, I need to think it over. And specifically learning, like we're going to interview with another agent and specifically learning the objection. And that took him from taking 20 listings a year to taking like 80. And it was all as a direct result of him learning how to acknowledge, how to use those key phrases, how to use tracking and setting aside. Is that right, Jose?
Yeah. Well, I think what's also helpful for me is back in the day, you gave me an example and you said to me, imagine that you were like an actor and you were interviewing for multiple different movies. How many different scripts would you have to memorize? He's like, how many different scripts does Denzel Washington, Adam Sandler have to memorize? And you're like, well, just pretend that you're an actor in real estate. How many different scripts will you have to memorize? He's like, here's the good news. Only memorize, you're only interviewing for the job of being the greatest real estate agent, and you only have to memorize the same scripts over your career. And when you said that to me, I was like, man, if I just learn this role really, really well, it becomes a money printing machine for me. Right. And that's essentially what it became now, where I know what to say. I know how to say it. I know how to handle objections. I know how to do set asides. To now, when I'm talking to people, I'm not fearing like, hey, what are they going to say to me? I'm just like, hey, look, even if they say I've already got another agent, I know how to handle those things. So it gives me confidence to go on more appointments.
That's right. And it gives you the trust to go on more of those appointments. And that understanding, that mental map of this idea that, Shakespeare said, like, we're all actors on a stage and we're all playing a role. And the role that we are trying out for is the role of a top producing salesperson who happens to sell real estate. And it's kind of like if I were to come to everybody that are on this call or watching via live stream and say, hey, here's the deal. I have this role that you can audition for, and it's on Broadway, and it's for a top producing salesperson who happens to sell real estate. Here's your book of lines, maybe 40 pages. Okay. And I need you to be prepared for the audition in 6 months. And you look at it, you're like, okay, cool. What does it pay? And you're like, well, how much do you want to make? I want to make $1 million. Great. Fine. The question becomes is how would you prepare for that audition? How much would you study that book? How often would you be standing in the mirror and just out loud saying like, hi, my name is Aaron Novello. I'm a local real estate agent. And I'm sure you figured out by now that you're probably all right. How often would I go over when somebody says to me like, hey, your commission's too high? Yeah, I appreciate that. And what I'm aware of is that the professional fee is one of the tools that we use to market the property as far as what we offer out to another agent if they can find us a buyer that's ready, willing, and able to purchase. So we'll go over the options that you have at your disposal. I promise you that won't be a reason why we don't do business. I'm sure we'll come up with something that's mutually beneficial to all parties. Naturally, you want it to be less. Obviously, I want to earn your business. So typically what we do in these situations is we have a candid conversation with regards to strategy and approach and come up with something that's mutually beneficial to all parties. So my question to you is if we could agree on that, do you think there'd be any other reason why we couldn't proceed and get started right now? Like, how often would you prepare for that role if you knew that if you nailed the audition, you would make $1 million a year on Broadway? Well, what I'm aware of is we are interviewing for that role every single day as professional salespeople who happen to sell real estate. And if you are not prepared for the time when somebody raises their hand and says, Jose, I'm thinking about selling my house, I'm going to interview 3 other agents, and you can't go in and deliver that role and nail your lines, then you're not going to get hired. And that's just the way it is. And the marketplace is impartial. It doesn't give a shit. It doesn't care if like you really need the listing or like you've been trying really hard. It's really about who's going to perform and nail that role. And the great news is, and I remember you saying it to me, Jose, after I shared it with you, I'm like, you know what the great news is, Jose? You're like, what? I'm like, you don't have to audition for like 10 roles, bro. It's only one.
Only one. That was a key changer for me, looking at it from an actor's perspective. Like thinking about like, I just saw Denzel's Washington, I forgot the name of the movie, but I just saw his latest movie and I'm just like, dude, how many times did he have to practice that specifically for that movie? I only got to learn one time. That's it.
That's it. And it might take you, like for me, it took me 3 years to get to a place where it was ingrained in me, you know, role playing twice a day, 6 days a week for 3 years. And for you, I remember you came to me and you were like, hey, bro, I want to do this at the same level that you do it at. What do I need to do? I'm like, well, you need to role play twice a day, 6 days a week. And you were one of the only people out of the hundreds that I spoke to that actually did it. And now what's so cool is when we're on like Clubhouse or we're on something like this, where we have the opportunity and a platform to share with other people, when people ask you a question, you answer it almost in the exact same way that I would answer it.
Yeah, very similar.
And vice versa. It's very similar. Now, you put your own kind of little thing on it, but underneath, at its core, is the exact same kind of principles.
I think the other thing in handling objections that I think people need to, that will help people handle objections, is understanding what the objection actually means. Like, yes, meaning giving it different meaning. Yes. So,
and here's what we're going to do. So on the next slide, before you even say that, we have another slide that talks exactly about that. So
I love it.
Right here, tracking and handling objections. So remember, I want you to walk away with this. Acknowledgement is different than agreement. I see where you're coming from. I understand. That makes sense. If I were you, I'd feel the same way. That's acknowledgement. It's not agreement. There's a track to follow, right? And then you want to make sure you're setting aside, because nothing is more deflating or kind of discouraging than handling an objection and right behind it is another one, right? You think you nailed it and then they're like, yeah, but what about this? And what about this? So that's why when I say, if we can come to an agreement on this, do you think there'd be any other reason why we couldn't proceed? Because I want to know. And let's say they say to me, well, yeah, I also want to talk to you about the marketing plan. Okay, so those two things. So if we can come to agreement on those, do you think there's any other reason we couldn't proceed? I don't think so. So now I know what the two are. Now I can handle them sequentially and close. Okay. So what are actually these objections? So what if I told you that there's really only like 3 main objections, and there's all variations of just one, of just those 3, excuse me. Right. So there's 3 real objections and just variations of the same one. So check this out. People say to you the following. You ready? What is your marketing plan? How many homes have you sold in the community? I've never heard of your company. And what are you going to do to sell my house? What are all of those objections actually asking you?
Can you sell my house?
Can you sell my house? They're all a variation of the same thing. So we walk around thinking like, oh man, I need an answer for each one of those. No, you don't. You need an answer for, can you sell my house?
You know what's funny? Sense? I never thought about it from that dynamic, how they're all variations of that one objection.
I love that, bro. So even the fucking teacher is still learning some stuff.
No, but even if they ask you, what is your marketing plan? That's a really good question. I think what you're really asking me is, do I have the ability to be able to sell your property?
Yeah, it's exactly right. Or they're like, how many homes have you sold in my community? It's a really good question. And I appreciate you asking. I'm imagining that what you really want to know is if I can get your home sold. You notice you could do it for the same one. I've never heard of your company. I see where you're coming from. And I'm imagining that what's underneath that is a concern of whether or not I can actually get the home sold. And here's what I can tell you, right, is that it's the activities of the individual agent that sell a property, not the company. And we've had the great fortune of helping X amount of families in the last 12 months or X amount of millions of dollars worth of real estate. So it's really not a question to me of whether or not we could or couldn't help you. It's really a question of just me trying to figure out what you're looking to accomplish and why, and then coming up with a game plan to help you and your family get what you want in the time you want. Does that make sense to you? And you're like, yeah, it makes sense. And then you move on. What are you going to do to sell my home? I appreciate you asking. And I know underneath that question is you want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to ensure that the home gets sold. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So what Jose is pointing out is that exact thing. You see how these are all variations of the same objection. And if you can understand that, then I only really need like one way to handle it because they're all variations of the same thing.
That's brilliant.
Of course it is. Let's go. All right. So, and now here's the next one. What do you think I can get? The other agent said I can get more. Zillow says it's worth more. What are they really asking you? How much am I going to net? They're all variations of the same thing. Okay. So what do you think I could get? Well, I appreciate you asking that. Notice I'm acknowledging I heard what they said to me, right? Yeah, I appreciate you asking. And I know underneath that question is you just want to make sure that A, we get the most, but also B, that you net as much as we possibly can. And I want you to know that we're on the same team there. The more we help you sell it for, obviously, the more we get compensated to help you. So what we're going to do together as a team is we're going to review this market analysis. And what we're going to see come to the surface is not a pinpoint to the penny in terms of price, but instead a tight, realistic range as to what's going to be reasonable. And then from there, it'll come down to strategy, right? Because price is a strategy in an attempt to get the most. And we'll go over those strategies so that way you feel comfortable with the one we ultimately end up choosing. Once we choose that strategy, I'll review with you a net sheet to show you precisely dollars and cents what the net would be to you and your family. And if it all makes sense, we can take the next steps. Fair enough? Okay, great. Other agents said I can get more. I understand. I see why that would be enticing. At the same time, I guess I'm wondering who ultimately would you say determines how much a home is worth? Would you say it's the agent or would you say it's buyers and sellers? Well, it's probably buyers and sellers. Yeah, 100%. So what do you think is a better metric to determine how much you can get? What an agent is saying or actually by looking at data to see what buyers and sellers have agreed to most recently? Well, I guess what buyers and sellers have agreed to most recently. Yeah, and in looking at this information, right, we've looked at it thoroughly. We see 3 actives, 3 closed, and 1 pending. The highest closed sale in the last 120 days was $650,000. And we looked at the pictures and we could see that, they had a redone kitchen and they had the pool. And I know we don't have those things. So honestly, if you were a buyer, not a seller, and you were going to buy this home all over again, where do you think you would feel comfortable making an offer that you believe would be reflective of fair market value? And then quiet. Because people don't do what you want them to do. They do what they self-discover. Right?
Even the Zillow says it's worth more. What I do in this situation, I'll be like, I'll pull it up. I'll be like, you're right. Zillow does say it's worth like $950 for the property. Let me check realtor.com. Realtor.com says $875. And then let me check Redfin. Redfin says $920. So which one is correct, Aaron? Is Zillow correct? Is Realtor.com correct? Or is Redfin correct?
It's dope.
And then they'll be like, well, the highest one is correct. And then I'll smile and be like, well, look, here's the problem with a lot of the online valuations is that because they haven't seen the home, a lot of their estimates are off by like 5 or even like 10% in most cases. So as opposed to relying on an on valuation that doesn't know anything about your property, what I think is a better metric for determining the value of your home is to refer back to what is sold and closed most recently and which properties are more comparable to yours. So we have the property on 123 Banana Street. That one sold at X. We have this one at 123 Banana Street that sold at Y. Honestly, like, what do you think the home is worth? So,
yeah, and time out. Did you hear what he just said there too? Everything after the word honestly has to be honest. Everything after the word obviously has to be obvious. Everything after the word realistically has to be realistic. So I know Jose is doing this and he doesn't even probably even recognize that he's doing it. But when he says like, honestly, what do you think makes the most sense here? What that does is that cues somebody's mind and the filter, it's like, oh, I have to be honest now. Right? He's like, well, and then they'll probably be like, well, yeah, like probably somewhere around here. And then once that happens, instead of being like, ha, I told you so, instead be like, yeah, I agree with you. The marketplace is showing us somewhere around seems to make sense. So now it just comes down to strategy. And again, price is a strategy you intend to get the most, and we'll go over those strategies because I want you to feel comfortable with the one we end up choosing. Whatever you decide, I'm going to support you. And then you can get into this two strategies: start higher, come down, or kind of position yourself competitively and get more than one offer and force people to compete. And then you can just ask them, so based on what you're looking to accomplish and why, based on the time frame you'd like to make this happen, in light of what you value most at this stage in your life and with this move, what do you think we should do? And then be quiet. So I think that what Jose just did there is spot on. So let's go to the next objection, which is a big one. And this one helped Jose tremendously too, and myself once I dialed it in. So when they say, what is your commission? The other agent said they would do it for less, and Redfin does it for X. Will you? What's the real objection? How much does it cost? That's really what it is, right? At its core. And I'm aware that this is something that I think a lot of agents are very confused with. Because on one end, I know a lot of the kind of coaches or instructors out there are just like, no. Any other questions? Like, well, that worked when A, there was no internet, and B, there wasn't as many options for the consumer. It doesn't work anymore. Okay, like at all. And B,
if you don't believe them, try it.
Yeah, try it. If you don't believe me, try that shit and see what happens. Be like, no, any other questions? And then watch them be like, okay, thanks for coming, Jose. And you walk out and somebody else takes a listen. So I think the way that you have to present needs to change, because the environment has changed. With the internet comes options and choices. Like if you think about it, you guys that are out there watching, you will go on Amazon and shop for 2 hours to save $10 on a product. Or shop for airline tickets to save $300 for like 4 days. You'll do homework for that. And we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars here to sell somebody's house. So naturally they're going to want to, find the best value, but the key word there is value. And I think in the past, what people would do is just be like, no, because I'm worth it. And I don't think that that's a realistic expectation in this environment. So you have to create value in multiple ways. We're going to teach you what to say and how to say it. That's part of it. It's not the complete part of the equation. The second part of the equation is creating perceived value, right? Because perceived value is value. And to prove my point, let me ask you a question. If you were on Amazon shopping for a product, and one product had 100 5-star reviews, and another one has 1,000 5-star reviews, same product, do the same thing, which one are you probably going to gravitate towards purchasing? The one with 1,000. What's very interesting is ask yourself a question. Would you be willing to pay an extra $2, $3, $4 for that product? The answer is yes, in most instances. What that is perceived value, right? The consumer perceives it to be worth more money because it has more kind of social proof. More people have said, yeah, this is a good thing. So one thing that you can do to preserve commission is creating perceived value. What would that look like? That would look like having a Google My Business profile with lots of reviews. I have over almost 300. Jose has like hundreds. Because when consumers look at that, they're like, oh, and if you're competing and you have like 10, same Amazon effect happens, right? The two is having a online brochure that people can look at, which is like a website, right? 3 is like, am I sending them a bomb video before I go and see them? Because nobody else does that. And that'll make me stand out, right? Perceived value, right? Profiles. Like if Jose comes in and Jose has 370,000 followers on TikTok and 142,000 on Instagram, that is distribution. And he could be like, yeah, on our profiles, he could pull it up. Like we get 100, whatever it is, like 100,000 views every 2 weeks. I'm wondering, if you had an agent that could give you that type of exposure, do you think that would lead to you getting more money? And they'll be like, well, yeah, probably, right? And then when I show up, what are my materials? If you're showing up with pieces of paper versus presenting on an iPad, there's going to be a difference in perceived value. If I'm showing up in yoga pants and fucking flip-flops, I had a seller tell me one time, he's like, hey man, appreciate you being so professional. I said, what do you mean? He's like, the last agent was here with yoga pants and flip-flops.
And a Starbucks coffee.
And a fucking Starbucks coffee. And I'm like, well, and I'm getting a listing. Meanwhile, you interview like 4 agents, right? So perceived value is part of the game. And if I'm not curating digital assets, like Google My Business, like a website, which is just an online brochure for people to check you out. Maybe it has a video there that's glossy and nice. If I'm sending BombBomb videos before I see them, if I'm sending them a pre-listing package before I see them, with the materials that I'm using when I'm showing up, right? My profiles that people are going to look at. If I'm not curating perceived value, then you just saying, well, here's, my wordy answer as to why you should pay me more. It's not going to be enough. The second thing that Jose does really, really well and intelligently is he actually creates real value, like tangible value. So one of the things he does is if you list and sell with him, you get to use a moving truck for free. Second thing is he will stage your home for free. Now, what he did over the course of his career is he owns now about $250,000 to $300,000 worth of furniture. So he has a competitive advantage over other agents is that he can provide this valuable service at a fraction of the cost of what it costs his competitors. But he does it for free. He doesn't try to tack on like more commission or a fee for it. You see what I'm saying? And then also he owns some short-term rentals. So if you need a place to stay, let's say we sell your house and you need a place to stay when you go from one to the next, he'll let you stay in one of the rentals for free. Guys, this is real value, tangible, like actual money value. So if the other agent says like, hey, yeah, we'll do it for less. He's like, okay, cool. I'm curious. Are they going to stage your home for free? Nope. Interesting. Do they provide you with like moving services where like, you can use their moving truck to go from one place to the next? No. And then, yeah, I'm wondering like if you need a place to stay, they'll give you like a free place to stay, like as far as like as you go from one sale to the next? No. Okay. Well, what I'm aware of is you typically get what you pay for. I guess my question is which has more value for you, knowing that you have all of those services or just, whoever's going to charge the least amount? Well, those services would be nice. Okay. And what I'm aware of is you always have options at your disposal. I mean, just like consumer and retail, we can go to Walmart or we can go to Neiman Marcus. Now we expect to get a certain quality at Walmart, don't we? Yeah. And we expect to get a different level of quality at Neiman Marcus. Now your home is a first class home. So how do you want to sell it, at Walmart or Neiman Marcus? You see what I'm saying? So there's a 3-pronged approach. And then we'll get into like how to say it. But I wanted everybody on this call to be clear. It's not just what you're saying. It's what you're saying, perceived value, and real value. Jose?
No, I was going to say even like ways to add value back when I didn't have, because a lot of people, one of the things that they do, Aaron, is they'll be like, well, I don't have the staging. I don't have the moving truck. I don't have the actual value. And then they think that because they don't have that, they can't do a good job in perceiving value. So one of the things that I did early on in my career is I created a visual plan of action before I had all these things. And then I would just sell different things so I think that the plan of action is a way of being able to sell perceived value. Because even like, I would say that you can add value even doing things like virtual staging. You can add value by helping them organize their home. Like meaning like before I had a stager, I would literally do a walkthrough of them with their home at the end of the presentation. I would say, move this here, move that there, put this plant here, put this pillow here, move this here. And that was my way of helping them prepare the home for sale. So the only advice is that I would give is don't get caught up on all that. If you don't have that, just know that the plan of action, if presented properly, you can add that perceived value as well too. All like if you and I try to sell professional photography, I may be better at selling the professional photography than you are, even though it's the same exact service. It's both professional photography. But in my presentation of the professional photography, I may go into the wide angle lens. I may go into the drone photography. I may go into things like sunset shots, like twilight photography. That's just me being better at selling the photography aspect, which in other words, adds more perceived value in the eyes of the consumer as well too.
That's exactly right. And that's what we're saying as far as like, it's not just what's being said. And I think the vast majority of the real estate community, or let me rephrase that, a very particular majority, like a slice, which is a relatively large slice of the real estate community, imagine that it's just that. It's just like, oh, I'm going to come up with this like, snazzy handler and that's going to be it. Well, that it's helpful. You need to know what to say. on how to protect professional fee. But you also have to do these other two things that we're saying. It's not just that. It's perceived value, and it's also tangible value, real value. Yeah. Right. I also don't see anything wrong with providing people with options, because that's how we're used to paying for things. Right. So it's like, look, we have this one option. We have a menu. So one option we have is like the standard listing. And let's say it's like, 5%. And here's what you get. And you get like some photography, maybe some flyers, and a normal open house and some other things. Go. Then we have our, deluxe package, or whatever it is, our pro package. And that includes all those things that the other things did, but it also has Matterport camera. It has a mega open house with 100 signs out and like all this other stuff. It has, we'll do like prospecting, where our ISAs will do just listed just sold calls around the neighborhood. It comes with a really nice video and like some other things. And then we have our guaranteed home sale package. And what that comes with is everything that the first two came with. It also includes, we will have the home professionally inspected, and we'll pay up to $1,000 for whatever comes up. It also includes a home warranty that we're going to pay for. It also includes that we'll have the property appraised before it goes on the market. We'll have it professionally cleaned before we put on the market, right? All these other things. And that's 7%. So, whatever option you want to choose is okay. And then they can make the decision, whether it's the 5, the 6, or the 7. And the way you structure that offer, obviously, the goal is to get them to the middle, right? But some people who are super motivated will look at them and be like, hey, honey, I think we need a guaranteed home sale. It's like, okay, cool. Let's rock.
I also think, Garen, the big part of adding value to somebody is looking at what the problems are and then pitching the right solution. That's a way of adding value, meaning that if somebody has a tenant occupied property, what are the odds of a tenant allowing me to stage his property? The odds of that are slim to none, because they're not financially incentivized. So what could be another way that I could add value to them? So if I'm presenting to a seller and I'm like, hey, look, I'm going to go in there and stage your property, the seller's going to look at me and be like, no, the tenants, I don't want to disturb the tenant. Why would I want to ask the tenant to move their stuff? Why would I want to inconvenience the tenant in any way, shape, or form? Instead, my way of adding value is going to be like, hey, look, like here's one of the ways that I can add value. Have you ever heard of a Matterport camera? They'll be like, no, what is a Matterport camera? Have you ever used Google Street View? Have you ever realized how on Google you can take a tour of a neighborhood without setting foot in it? Be like, yeah, I realized that. Well, we actually do the same thing in real estate. So what I'm going to recommend to you, or what I think would be helpful to you, is so that we don't have a bunch of people walking through your home, we'll do a 3D tour of the property. We make everyone take the 3D tour. And then if they like the property, they can either make us an offer, or if they like the property, then we can schedule a showing. What this is going to do is going to take this amount of showings, and it's going to reduce it to this amount of showings. And it's going to make it so only serious people walk through the home. That's a way of adding value for that specific situation. So just remember, you can add value by looking at what their problems are and then custom tailoring that to whatever their problem is, basically.
That is so good. I hope you guys are taking notes. Drop in the chat if this is helpful to you. Drop in the chat if you're learning some things today. Drop in the chat if this is taking it to the next level, if this is actual tactical information, nothing like what you're getting at, whatever meeting you're going to. And they're saying things to you like, it's all mindset, guys. Come on, baby. We don't fuck around here at the Elite Builders, bro. It's fire. All right, good. So now let's share with them, Jose, kind of like doing some role play, because we got a few more moments and we can get into that. Let me share my screen again. So when you're hearing these objections, which are, what is your commission? The other agent said to do it for less, and Redfin says they do it for X. Remember, follow the track. Acknowledgement. What is your commission? I appreciate you asking. And, the professional fee is one of the tools that we use to market the property in terms of what we offer out to another agent if they can find us a buyer that's ready, willing, and able to purchase. And we'll go over what those options are, because I want you to feel comfortable with the one we end up choosing. I promise you this, that really is not going to be a reason why we don't do business. I'm sure we'll come up with something that's mutually beneficial to all parties. Now use the track. Obviously, you want it to be less. Naturally, I want to earn your business. So typically what we do is we have this conversation, we review options, we come up with something that we both feel good about, because I want us both to feel good about it. Otherwise, we won't do it. And then, we proceed from there. So my question is if we can come to an agreement in terms of the professional fee right now, would there be any other reason why we couldn't get started today? And they're either going to say yes or no. And if they're like, well, no, I don't think so. Now you ask, what were you thinking? The reason is because we're negotiating. And, I want you to share with me what you were thinking. Because they might be thinking, 5.5, and you're thinking already dropping to 5. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. And that's happened multiple times to me. And once I started to be like, well, what were you thinking? In my head, I'm like, whoo, I was like already like wiping out like a point or two. You know what I'm saying? Right. And then when that happens, something that Jose does really well too, is like, let's say you're like, what were you thinking? And they're like 5%. You're like, normally.
But that's part of the acting part, right?
Yeah, it's part of the process.
It's part of it's part of me like being, oh man. Would you do it for? Would you do it for 5.5?
Bro, that was like a Denzel moment right there. He even looked away off in the distance. It's like
I may even swallow like a little bit like a gulp, basically. Yeah. But that's all part of it. So here's another one. Like whenever I get asked, like, what is your commission over the phone? I'll say something that's a really good question. What I usually tell my clients is that I don't have a set commission that I charge. I try to be flexible and accommodate to whatever my clients' needs are. Is there a certain commission structure that you're looking for to try to see if maybe I can accommodate to that? And like, oh no, I don't really have one. Okay, so here's what I would recommend. Allow me to see the property first. I'll tell you what I can sell it for. Then if you like the price that I'll sell it for, we'll come to an agreement on what it will cost you. And then if you like that, then we can go ahead and move forward. Is that fair enough?
It's perfect. So, and they're like, well, yeah, that's fair. And now we're having a conversation. It's like, all right, what were you thinking? Well, here's what I was thinking. And then, you take it from there.
And then even if they tell me, yeah, well, I was thinking like 4%. I'm like, okay, so why don't we do this? Let's meet at the property first. Let me tell you what I can sell it for. And if you like what I can sell it for, I promise you commission won't be a reason we don't do business. I don't say, okay, great, I can do it for 4%. I'll say, great, why don't we do this? Allow me to see it first. And the reality is that it's going to be a lot harder for me to demonstrate that value over the phone than in person when they see me in person.
And I want you guys to really hear what Jose just said, okay? Because it's a key. It's like the difference between being a professional and being an amateur. Is when they said 4% and he's over the phone, most of you guys be like, wow, you try to get into handling it. He didn't do that at all. And you don't want to do that, right? Because you don't have your whole being at your disposal. You only have your voice and tonality. You don't have your physical being, and you can't demonstrate value, like you said. So when they say 4%, it's like, okay, well, let's get together. We'll take a look at the property. I can give you a clear, realistic picture as to how we can maximize value and what top dollar would be. We'll have a conversation and we'll take it from there. Fair enough. And they're like, okay. Because now he wants to get in front of him to be able to demonstrate value, show him pictures of before and after properties that he staged and how much money he got, show them, how the things that he's done for properties help people to get $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 more over the asking, to therefore create value in the minds of the consumer. See, price is only an issue in the absence of value. Everybody who's listening to this should write that down, okay? None of you guys care that iPhones are $1,500. You don't give a shit because it's so valuable. You're willing to finance the phones. You don't even fucking own them. Okay? Price only is an issue in the absence of value. So Jose's not going to try to demonstrate value over the phone because that's dumb. Instead, what he's going to do is be like, yeah, okay, well, let's get together. We'll have a conversation. I can show you some of the things that we do to maximize value and get owners top dollar. And then we'll take it from there. Fair enough? I'm like, okay, fair. Now, once he's demonstrated the value and he shows them before and after and all this other stuff, then they ask him, well, can you do it for 4%? Now, Jose, because he's a pro, is not going to be like, oh, I'm so sad they asked me that. I can't believe it. He's excited because this is what he's prepared for. He knows, okay, he knows in his mind, they wouldn't be asking me that question if they weren't seriously considering hiring me. So I know when they ask it, what Jose does is smile because he's excited. He knows, yep. We're moving in the right direction. I remember being on a listing appointment and I walked in, he was for sale by owner. He's like, look, hands are like this. Aaron, I want to be clear. I'm not listing the home today. I'm not signing anything. I said, listen, I appreciate that. And I want to be equally as clear that that is my intention. So provided that what I say makes sense to you and you feel comfortable and confident, I brought all the appropriate paperwork with me and I'm prepared to go to work for you today. Fair enough? He was like, okay. We started presenting, we go over stuff, and I didn't realize I sold the home across like right over the way for a cousin of his. He's like, oh man, you sold Billy's home? I was like, yeah. Then he asked me, all right, so how much is your commission? As soon as he said that to me, I'm like, he's listing the property today. He wouldn't ask me that if he wasn't interested. Mm-hmm. So Jose gets excited, and now they start to have the conversation. And they're like, well, 4%. He's like, well, okay. Well, as I mentioned to you over the phone, I usually, look to accommodate sellers, based on what they're looking for. So we can go over the options that you have at your disposal because I want you to feel comfortable with the one we end up choosing. I promise you this, that will not be a reason why we don't do business. I'm sure we'll come up with something that's mutually beneficial to all parties. So if we could agree on that today, do you think there'd be any other reason why we couldn't proceed and get started? No. Okay. Now he can go into the options and then he can ask them based on what you're looking to accomplish and why, based on what you value most, which one of those options do you think would serve you best? And then they make the decision and he walks out with the listing agreement. Versus the person where somebody said 4% over the phone, they try to handle it. Guess what? They never actually see them. They never get an opportunity to present. And then they're like, well, I showed that seller. Maha. Yeah. Well, good for you. I think that's awesome. So let's go to the chat. Let's see. Hey, repeat, put on chat about value and price. So does anybody have any questions? Because we have like 7 more minutes. Does anybody have any questions or particular objections that you would like me and Jose to address? Or let's see, we're live. See if anybody's asking. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments.
Address 4% commission. When you know what's going, I want to think about it. New agent, no sales, how to prove value.
All right, so let's do I want to think about it because I think that happens a lot. And for Jose, this was also a big one. Where, and I remember him calling me like the day that they said they wanted to think about it and he handled it. He called me like, oh my God, like this is like magical. I can't believe like this happened. Because he just stood there and he did something like the following. Like, yeah, listen, I get that. Notice I'm acknowledging, I'm not agreeing. I get that, right? This is a big decision and you want to make sure you're making the best decision possible. So what I'd like to do is to go over with you before I go. I'd like to go over with you the 3 decisions a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market in hopes that doing so can help you to make the decision that you feel is best as far as how to proceed. And whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. So time out. Let's look at what's happening there. I acknowledged. Yeah, I get it. This is a big decision. You want to make sure you're making the best decision possible. So what I'd like to do is to go over with you the 3 decisions a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market before I go. Notice when I say before I go, what's happening in the consumer's nervous system? They're like, okay, this is done, right? We're done. They're out of the hot seat. Meanwhile, they're not out of the hot seat, right? But I'm creating an environment psychologically in which they feel like they're out of the hot seat. So before I go, I'd like to go over with you the 3 decisions that a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market in hopes that doing so can help you to make the decision that you feel is best as far as how to proceed. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. Fair enough? And they're like, yeah, that's fair. Okay, great. So the first decision that a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market is if they're even going to sell it. Sometimes when I meet with families and they see what the marketplace is showing them as realistic based on what buyers and sellers have been agreeing to recently, it's not in alignment with their expectation or perhaps what they need from a net perspective to actually make the move happen. And they decide to do something different, maybe hold on to it or rent the property out. Now, is that a serious consideration or option for you? And they're like, well, no. I mean, we're definitely going to sell it. Which, by the way, I will know that because I pre-qualified fully before I went and saw them. Okay. Okay, so we've already made that decision. And on my notepad, I will go like this. Check. So the second decision that a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market is the price. Now, I'm imagining you would like it to be more. I sure would as well, because the more we can sell your home for, the more we get compensated to help you. At the same time, are we in agreement after looking at what's active on the market and not selling and what's sold and closed most recently, that the marketplace is showing us somewhere around $650 seems to be reasonable? Well, yeah, I thought I would like to get more, but that seems to be reasonable. Okay, so we're in agreement with regards to what the marketplace is showing us. Check. Again, on the notepad. So that leaves us with the third decision that a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market. And that's just who's going to help you, right? And you strike me to be a straightforward person, Jose. I'm the same way. So let me just ask directly. Based on our initial conversation via telephone, based on what you've seen online, track record reviews, things of that nature, based on our conversation today, honestly, do you feel comfortable and confident with me that not only could I help you sell this home, I would also look out for your best interest. They're like, well, yeah, Jose, I mean, you seem to know what you're doing. You know what the great news is? What's that? You've made the 3 decisions a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market. May I make a suggestion? Let's do this. I mean, you're here, I'm here. We can take care of the appropriate paperwork. We can have the photographer out here by Friday and have it up and active on the market by Monday. How does that sound? And they're gonna be like, okay, I guess we could go ahead and proceed, right? Now, what I'm aware of is like not every single time that'll happen. 30-40% of the time, if you follow that track, it will. They will say, sure, all right, well, let's just go ahead and proceed. Anything you want to add to that, Jose?
No, what I would say is just the mindset. Whenever you hear I need to think about it, like what I usually think about is like game on, meaning like I think the reason I struggled with that objection so much is that I didn't realize what was happening, that a lot of times the sellers weren't going to be transparent with me at that point. And a lot of times they would say, no, there's nothing wrong. I'm not the type of person that makes decisions on the spot, but there's something there. So what I realized with that objection specifically is that I had to find out what was it that they needed to think about. And that talk track that you just went over is a very good way of identifying what is it. Now, the only thing I would add to that, most of the time when they need to think about it, it's either price or commission. Most of the time, that's what it's going to be. So if you know that, just be, whenever he says, hey, are we pretty much in agreement that right about 900,000 is the price that the market's recommending? I would just pay extra attention to that. Meaning like if they say, well, you know what, I get what you're saying, but I like for it to be more, but I guess I'm okay with it. It may require an additional conversation with that. And in that case, I may say, well, look, I want to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident with the price. So why don't we put this aside for a moment and let's revisit the pricing conversation in just a few moments. And then I would transition to, do you believe that I can help you sell your property? And then I would come back to the price. I would be like, look, it sounds like the main reason you need to think about, or the main thing you need to think about, is the price. Is that correct? Yes. Let me ask you this. If we can come to an agreement on the price, would there be any other reason we couldn't do business today? No, there wouldn't. Okay, what were you thinking? And then I'm revisiting the pricing conversation at that point. So that's the only thing that I want to make people aware. And then if you guys want the full breakdown of that, we do go live on Clubhouse every week. And this Wednesday, I did a full, very detailed breakdown, step by step, as to how to break that down. So I would go back and listen to that as well too, in a very detailed manner, if you guys want that one specifically. And on Clubhouse, if you guys go back, there's actual previous recordings. If you guys follow me and Aaron, and you can go back and listen to previous recordings as to how to handle other objections as well too.
Love that. And Jesus asked, he's like, so it's too aggressive to be like, what's stopping you? Yeah, in my opinion. Instead, you can be like, listen, what I'm aware of is, usually when somebody tells me I want to think about it, like, and I mean this humbly, I really do, like 90% of the time when I meet with people in person, particularly when they see our track record and reviews, they do decide to hire me and put me to work. If for some reason they don't, there's usually a few things they want to think about. So what I'd like to do is review them with you before I go, so that way you can make the decision that you feel is best. The first is if they're going to sell. The second is the price. The third is the professional fee. So just so I know, is any one of those three something you want to think about? And let's say they're like, well, yeah, I think the commission's a little high. Okay. Well, again, like I mentioned to you, the professional fee is never going to be a reason why we don't do business. I'm sure we'll come up with something that's mutually beneficial to all parties. I want us both to feel good about what we're doing. Otherwise, we won't do it. So my question is if we could come to an agreement in terms of the professional fee, would there be any other reason why we couldn't proceed today? So by doing what Jose was saying, what we're doing is we're fleshing it out. Because the thing about sales that's really uncomfortable is a lack of clarity. When they tell you want to think about it and you're like, okay, and you walk out, you have no fucking idea what they're thinking about. But if you put it on the table, like it's like you open up the kimono, you're like, what is it? Is it this, or this? Like, which one is it? So we can have the conversation that dramatically increases the probability that you'll be able to handle it and obtain the business. Because if you walk out, they say they want to think about it and you're like, great. And you walk out and you're like, I think we really had a great connection. They had a puppy and I had a puppy. Like somebody like me and Jose is going to come in there, flesh it out, handle the objection, and get the business.
Even this, like I remember one of the times I called you, the guy goes, I just needed some time to think about it. I like everything that you have to say. Normally I would be like, great, like I'm going to leave and he's going to call me back. And then they would never call me back. And then I remember saying to him, I'm like, can I be pretty transparent with you? And he goes, sure. I'm like, I believe that the main thing that you have to think about is you didn't like the commission that I was charging, and you think the commission is too high. And then he looks at me, he's like, how did you know? And I'm like, look, like, I remember in our conversation over the phone, you told me that commission was important. So I believe that that's the main thing that you have to think about. And he goes, it is. I'm like, well, let me ask you this. If we can come to an agreement on a commission, something that's fair for you and fair for me, would there be any other reason we couldn't do business? And he goes, no. I'm like, what were you thinking? And he goes, well, I was thinking this. I'm like, have you already had other agents agree to that? Yeah, I have another agent that's saying that. I'm like, okay, great. So now it becomes a negotiation at that point. But because I know that most of the time it's going to be price or commission, because I have ways of flushing it out, that allowed me to get a contract signed without him even interviewing the other agent. So the other agent never even got the at bat to go against me, which it felt good to walk away with that contract. I remember that was the time I called you like super excited. And I was like, man, like this is like a game changer. Like I'm not having to come back a second time. I'm not having to like be like, am I going to get it or not? I handled it and it got signed.
Guys, proximity is power. You're one relationship away from changing your family tree for the rest of your life. I came from a family who's very nice. They mean well, didn't really know anything from a financial perspective, working kind of poor, living paycheck to paycheck. I've had 5 relationships in my life that has dramatically changed the course of my life. The beautiful thing is that my intention now is to be that relationship for other people. I was that relationship, one of the relationships for Jose, but he's also been that relationship for me because he put me on to the thing that we're going to talk about right now, which is that until recently, I don't know, maybe 10 months ago, 16 months ago, I didn't really see a way of getting off the transaction treadmill. I was selling a lot of homes, 2,000 homes in my career, right? 100 a year, 10 years in a row. I was using that money, 50% of that money to buy things that pay me money. And that was working, just taking a while. But I didn't see a way to get off the transaction treadmill. So what we're going to do is we're going to share with you now the vehicle, the model, EXP, the model and the opportunity. And the intention in doing that is hopes that it will equip you with the same opportunities that it has equipped me and Jose with. And if you think that kind of about EXP because you've probably been approached about it before, I just want you to for a moment, be free of whatever it is that you think you know, right? Suspend in your mind whatever it is that you think you know about the model and the opportunity, because the most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind. That was my experience. And what I'm also aware of is, I have the good fortune of talking all across the country now, and I'll be in a room, however many agents, 100, 200, 300, 400, and I'll ask a question. I'll be like, hey, how do you think we see? Do you think it's our eyes that see? And everybody's like, yeah, it's your eyes that see. I'm like, well, what if I told you that it's not your eyes that see? It's actually your mind that sees. And if my mind is blind to the possibility, my eyes will be blind to the opportunity. There will literally be something right in front of me, and I will not see it. So suspend whatever it is that you think you know. Give yourself an opportunity to see something in hopes that it can be helpful or useful to you the same way that it has been for us. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. So me and Jose see some really big challenges in the kind of real estate model and the real estate industry, right? I actually used to own part of an office. I sold it back in order to participate in this opportunity. But the question is why is EXP the fastest growing company of all time? They went from 20,000 agents to 90,000 agents in 3 years. Why is that happening, right? And what if there was a way that you could learn how to sell real estate in high volume, never pay for coaching, and you got super high level of instruction and technology? And you never had to pay for either one of those ever again. That would be pretty dope. So here's the harsh reality. Most agents are not planning for their financial freedom. They are on a transaction treadmill. Okay? They're just doing deals. And they're doing deals to pay bills. And they're also not being professionally coached, which is pretty wild because the attrition in our business is 70% of agents within 1 year are out, and within 5 years, 80% are doing something else. And I believe the primary reason why that is because we have mediocre individuals trying to teach people how to be productive, right? So why is EXP disrupting the industry so much? Well, we are living through a time of massive disruption. Massive. We just don't realize it. I had to actually explain to my son recently what Blockbuster was. He had no clue. And Blockbuster was a $6 billion juggernaut. And the story that they told themselves, remember, if my mind is blind to the possibility, my eyes will be blind to the opportunity. They told themselves, everybody's always going to want to pay late fees. It's always going to be this way. And companies can get high on their own supply. Something's working now and they think it's always going to work. Well, then this company called Netflix comes along. And what they saw, initially it was DVDs they could send you to in the mail, but then what they ultimately saw was streaming. The leadership team at Blockbuster did not see streaming. Blockbuster now is completely out of business. A $6 billion company at one time disappeared off the face of the planet. Now, the question is what was the underlying technology that allowed that to happen? It's the internet, specifically high-speed internet and streaming, okay? Circuit City, one of the first jobs I had as a young person, 17 years old. I work at Circuit City in Plantation, Florida. It was a dope job. First sales job I ever had. They taught you how to like sell the extra warranty because you would get a little bit of extra money, right? They gave you some sales skills. If you put stuff into people's hands, it increases the probability that they'll buy it. And it was a great job. They dominated electronics and they dominated home, appliances. And then this little company called Amazon comes along. Amazon starts off with books. They get into the electronic business and appliances business. And what happens to Circuit City? They disappear off the planet. They're no longer in business. What was the underlying technology that allowed that to happen? The internet, specifically high-speed internet. And what I think is so interesting for all you guys like listening to this, and particularly if you're not with EXP currently, if you were selling real estate between 2020 and 2021, ask yourself a question. Did you go to the office? I know the answer. It's no. Now ask yourself a second question. Did it matter? I know the answer. It's no. So we all did this model for a full year. We just didn't call it that, which is pretty wild. You had the same kind of, like splits that never capped. You were paying for an office that you were never using, all of that stuff. We all did this model. We were all doing it. We just didn't call it that. Okay. And it's that underlying technology, the internet, is what's disrupting brokerages and allowing EXP to grow from 20,000 to 90,000 in just 3 years. Now, the CEO of Blockbuster actually said the following out loud in print, okay? He said, neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on our radar screens in terms of competition. Is that not the height of exuberance, the height of overconfidence? Is that not the height of being high on your own supply? I don't know if you know this. The CEO of Netflix, Reed Hastings, one of the founders, he tried to sell Netflix to Blockbuster, not once, twice. First time he flew his whole executive team out to Blockbuster's, big, huge, high-rise headquarters, sat down in their office, and they laughed him out of the office. Then he tracked down the CEO at a ski lodge. You know how much he offered Netflix to Blockbuster for? $50 million. It is now a multiple billion-dollar company. The CEO, Jim, could have went down in history as one of the best CEOs of all time. Instead, his mind was blind to the possibility, so his eyes are blind to the opportunity. Let me ask you guys a question. Could have Blockbuster gobbled up Netflix and still be dominating in the entertainment industry? 100%. They didn't see the opportunity. Their mind was closed. The most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind. Okay? And I can say this emphatically because my mind was closed for a full year. Jose, my little brother from another mother that I've had the good fortune of working with for like 10 years, that me and him are like tight, thick as thieves. He was telling me for a whole year, bro, you got to look at this thing, man. And my response is, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Why? Because my mind was shut down. Okay. The most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind. So there's two questions you got to be asking yourself. Number one, have I found the opportunity that will take care of me and my family for the rest of my life? And number two, am I even looking for it? If you can't answer those two questions, how can you go back confidently to your family and say, hey, number one, I haven't found the opportunity. It's going to take care of me and my family for the rest of my life. And number two, I'm not even looking for it.
Well, I'll tell you this, Aaron, like I was introduced to EXP in 2017 and I didn't join until 2021. When I was first introduced to the company, I was like, nope, I don't want to take my eyes off production. Nope, I don't want to bring on other agents. Nope, I don't want any distractions. What I didn't realize is that EXP was actually a solution to a lot of the things in our industry. What I didn't think about is like, what happens if I get a heart attack today, and like how long is my family okay for? What happens if my wife gets cancer tomorrow? Like, would I be able to take care of her, or am I dependent on selling real estate? What happens if one of my kids, like something happens to them? Would I be in a financial position to be able to take care of them? And the answer for some of those at that time was no. And I was like, man, EXP actually can solve a lot of these things. So my question to all of the people listening is, if any of those events happen to any of you guys, how long would your family be okay for?
That's right. It's a dope question, and it's something to consider. So on this next slide, you can see here, I remember when I was a kid and I went to another, we traveled somewhere, we went on vacation outside of where we lived. We only had two choices in terms of where we can stay. One was a hotel, the second was a friend's house. Is that the case now? No, you have all these short-term rentals. The dominant player in that space is Airbnb. Do you know that Airbnb has a bigger valuation than Hilton Hotels, and Airbnb doesn't own any real estate? What is the underlying technology that allows that to happen? The internet. Does that make sense? We're watching this happen, guys. We're watching it all around us.
What is the underlying factor at EXP?
That's right.
The internet.
The internet. Glenn Sanford realized 10 years ago, plus, high-speed internet. When that proliferates and becomes available to everybody, we'll be able to do our job in a meaningful way that doesn't interrupt it in any way, and eliminate a lot of the physical world expenses. That's what this is. I believe, just out of purely economics, guys, if you look at what's happening in the brokerage business, the net is being compressed because the cost of sale is going up. You have HomeLight, who just raised their fees to 33%. All these other platforms, 33, 35, 38%, that are taking away bigger chunks. We have a lawsuit coming down the pipe where I believe that the way we enter information into the multiple listing service, and also how buyers agents gets compensated, will change. You will have to negotiate with the buyers in order to, whatever fee you're going to get, which means revenue will shrink. Purely economics alone. Me and Jose were talking about this yesterday. Purely economics alone, over the next 10 years, 50% of all agents will be with cloud-based brokerages. Period. And there's other models out there that are copycats. You know what the thing is? A bunch are trying to duplicate. A bunch are trying to imitate, but none of them can duplicate, because we are 90,000 agents at scale and it's profitable. So you have to ask yourself a question. If you are considering other models, what would you rather go with? A startup that's not proven and not making any money, or one that is proven, that is the Coca-Cola of that, right? The other cloud-based brokerages that, are even trying to compete have like 12,000 agents. We have 90,000. Okay. So traditional models of real estate. This is what the traditional model of real estate has been, right, for a long time. It's basically feudalism, which is where you have a king or queen at the top. They go out and they sell a region. That people pay millions of dollars to own a region. That regional owner goes out and sells individual offices or franchises. That individual office owner goes out and recruits agents. Those agents do all the work, right? And they never own anything. And all the money flows back up to the top. I always find it interesting. People are like, oh, it's like a pyramid scheme. I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. If you look in corporate America, there's a CEO at the top, right? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that person makes 35% more, like 35 times what everybody else makes, correct? Yeah. Okay. And then they have C-suite executives underneath them, right? Like, yeah. Okay. And then underneath them are middle managers. Yep. And then underneath them are the workers. Yep. And you're like, okay, what shape is that? It's a fucking pyramid. It's like all businesses are structured that way. What the traditional form of real estate is this. Now, if it's a small independent, you could just cut out the region and all you have is like the CEO who's a local owner and there's agents. There's no way you can ever own part of anything. You're basically renting out your business and you're a peasant. That's essentially what it is. Okay. And all the money flows back up to the top. Now, there was another model that came along and said, okay, we can do this better. And it wasn't out of benevolence. It was out of pain. Because the founder of this company had half of the agents leave one day. And he sat them down and said, hey, what do we need to do this better? One, we need transparency. And two, we want to share in the profit. He was like, okay. So he did that. Now that was revolutionary because before that, it was just feudalism. An agent couldn't own part of anything. This model allowed an agent to own part of something, okay? And that caused them to go to 180,000 agents, right? What's interesting about that model is it's based on physical offices that each cost $40,000 to $50,000 a month to run, which means there's not that much profit, which means there's not that much profit sharing. I know because I used to own part of an office, okay? And ask yourself a question after, what we dealt with in 2020, 2021, moving forward, if the highest expenses are staff and space with everything that's happening in the industry, which model would you, or which business would you want to own a piece of? First of all, you could never own a piece of that other model. But second of all, which business would you want to be with? One that is based in the digital world or one based in the physical world? I think that answer is self-explanatory. So what EXP has done is they've said, okay, cool, here's what we're going to do. We're going to eliminate the region, eliminate the individual office owners, eliminate all the staff, and the agent becomes the owner. We're going to compensate them like an owner. We're going to give them equity in the actual mothership of the company. Ask yourself a question. With your company currently, whoever you're with, how many deals would you have to do to become an owner in the actual company itself? Not the office, the actual company. The answer is, it's not possible. Okay? We're here, we do get compensated that way. So what do you get? You get lead generation, technology, training, health insurance, stock awards, revenue share, and collaboration. This is why a lot of top producers and very smart entrepreneurial individuals, 90,000 strong, have made the decision to make the change to EXP. So if I want you to really think hard about this, you are not going to get rich renting out your time. You must own equity. I come from a family of really hard workers, 6 days a week, right? I watch my dad do that. He still does it 6 days a week. The challenge is he doesn't own any equity. Think about in your life, 65% of us come from families that live paycheck to paycheck. So 6 out of 10 of you, almost 7 of you who are watching this come from those experiences. Those people in your life that live paycheck to paycheck, ask yourself a question. Do they own equity in anything? And I know the answer. It's no. If you want to, you will never get rich selling time, trading time for money. You must own equity. So are you getting any upside in the mothership? Because right now there's no retirement plan for agents. There's no opportunity at the end of their working career for them to have something to show, other than maybe if they set aside some money and bought some properties. Okay. And this opportunity provides you with that. How do they do that? Brokerage is in the cloud. They eliminate all the expenses. They compensate you like an owner. It's pretty simple. And again, wrap your head around this. From 2020 to 2021, you were all doing this model. You just didn't call it that. Okay. So why are me and Jose so excited about this opportunity? Well, this is an innovation curve. Okay. So when something's new, you have innovators. They see something before anybody else does. Let me ask you a question. When Elon Musk said 10 years ago that everybody's going to be driving electric cars, what was everybody's response? They were like, come on, bro. No way. Now let me ask you a question. How many people have noticed there's much more Teslas on the road? See them all the time. You know what's really fascinating about that? 9 out of 10 people don't drive a Tesla. Do you think Tesla has more room to sell Teslas? 100%. Do you know that 9 out of 10 agents aren't with EXP? Do you think EXP is an opportunity to run? 100%. I firmly believe we will be at 400,000 agents in the next 10 years. If we're at 90 now, that means we're only 30% into the growth curve. That's exciting. So at the beginning, that innovator sees something other people don't. It's only 2.5% of the growth. Then you get the early adopters. Early adopters have a high tolerance for risk. They're like, okay, this is cool. Kind of like when he was exposed to it in 2016. It's like people have a really high tolerance for risk. They're like, let's rock and roll. And they jump in, right? These are the AJ Midas of the world, the Jay Kinders, like those kind of people. Then you have, and that's 13.5% of the growth. Then you have the early majority. Those people have a lower tolerance for risk. They need more people to do it in order for it to feel safe. That's kind of more like me and Jose. Need more people to do it for us to be like, okay, this is something we can get into, right? That's 34% of the growth. The late majority, they have FOMO. They feel like they're missing out. That's 34%. And then you have the laggards. Those people still have flip phones and AOL email addresses. Okay. The reason why me and Jose are so excited about this opportunity and spending as much time, energy, and effort with it is that if you notice on this curve, 68% of all the growth is from early majority to late majority. And I firmly believe, and Jose does as well, we are at the beginning of the early majority of this opportunity. Enough people have done this that people feel like it's safe. Okay. So is this going to be you? Jose loves this slide. It's his slide. And like, is this going to be you? Are you going to be selling real estate forever? You know, I always find it so interesting. People are like to me, wow, yeah, I know. I just love people. I'm like, well, that's kind of gross. You haven't dealt with enough people. Or I just love houses. And you're like, okay. Like I've been in, you know how many houses I've been in where I'm like, okay, thank you, ma'am. I'm going to have to burn my suit because you had a cat farm. There's just a lot of that. So the deal is do I have an exit strategy? Is there an off-ramp? And I find it very interesting that the knock on EXP is like that agents eventually figure out a way to get out of production. It's like, well, all you guys do is just try to figure out a way to get out of production. It's like, well, isn't that the game? Like, and then you can pour out and add value to the next generation of agents to help them do likewise. Like that would make sense, right? So this comes from a book called The Cash Flow Quadrant. Okay. If you haven't read it, read it. It's by Robert Kiyosaki. Talks about the flow of money. There's E's, S's, B's, and I's. E's are employees. They are very motivated by things like benefits. I'm sure everybody has had somebody in our life say, hey, you know, Jose, you should get a real job that has benefits and vacation pay and things like that. That's how employees think. Then there's self-employed people, doctors, accountants, attorneys, real estate agents. Notoriously, they have an opportunity to make lots of money. They're usually notoriously bad at managing that money. Then there's business owners who own a system, and then there's investors. 95% of the population and 95% of all agents exist on the E and S quadrant. And that's, by the way, that's where all the worst taxes are. It's where the least incentives are, right? Business owners and investors have the best tax opportunities and the most incentives. So what this model does is it makes me a business owner and an investor simultaneously through equity and through rev share. Ask yourself a question at your current company, other than the commissions that you have, is there any other opportunities for you to earn equity or to become a B or an I? And I know the answer to that, it's no. So here's the question. What's your I'm done number, right? Because because of the internet and the proliferation of information, I find it so interesting. Like people have it's kind of like knowing a little bit of karate can get you in trouble. I feel like people they have a vague understanding of cash flow, a vague understanding of like residual income or like passive income. So they'll throw out these like outrageous numbers, but they never actually do the math. So let's use a $10,000 number, $10,000 a month in residual income. In my opinion, that should cover housing, transportation, food, and insurance for like everybody that's on this call. Okay. Even with inflation, you should be. And in my opinion, if you can cover housing, transportation, food, and insurance, you are financially free and independent. You no longer have to work for money. Okay. Well, if we use that number, that's $120,000 a year in residual income. That's $2.4 million invested at 6%, or excuse me, 5%. Now, in order to get $2.4 million, you would have to gross $5 million, maybe even more if you're in a lovely state of California, because they take 51 cents for every dollar that you earn. So ask yourself a question. How much would it take? How long would it take for me to gross $5 million? Live, store, and invest that money, because that's what it would take for me to get to the 2.4 million. Okay. And you could also ask yourself a question. How much of that do I already have? And then how much do I need, and how long would it take for me to produce that? Okay. So my intention in showing you this, it's not to brag or boast, but it's just to give you kind of an example of the power of what EXP provides you with. So this rev share thing, I know it gets like it gets this interesting kind of bad reputation. People are like, oh, it's a scam, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh yeah, it's really a scam? Well, let me ask you a question. YouTube, everybody familiar with that model? Yeah, everybody understands YouTube. They all watch it, YouTube Shorts, long form, to learn stuff. Well, do you know what YouTube did in 2007 or 8? They went to their content creators and they said, hey guys, we need you because we're just a platform for content. You actually create the content. So we want to create a symbiotic relationship, a win-win financial arrangement between the two of us where we both win. Here's what we're going to do. If you have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time, we will give you half the revenue that we generate from ads on your content. Ask yourself a question. Is that a scam? I know the answer. No, it's just an economic model called revenue sharing. Okay. And what that did is that caused YouTube to become the second largest search engine in the world at record speed. And it also caused Google to take note of that, because it took YouTube half the time to become the second largest search engine in the world that it took Google. So Google was like, oh shit, we can't have that. So they bought YouTube. Okay. What EXP says to their agents is, if you bring agents to our platform, and I need you to understand something, brokerages are just platforms to process transactions with some kumbaya and some handholding. That's all it is. So if you bring agents to our platform, okay, and they sell any real estate, we will give you half of the revenue we will give you a small portion of the $16,000 cap that they send back to us. So it's not coming out of the agent's commissions. It is coming out of the money that's being sent to EXP. Drop in the chat if that makes sense to you, if you're listening to this. Drop in the chat if that YouTube explanation makes sense to you as far as what revenue sharing actually is. Good. Simple. Not a scam. Not something to be like, ooh, hocus pocus. Same thing YouTube did. It's just revenue sharing. So I'm going to share my screen right now, because that was an old slide, and I want to show you. And again, this isn't to make it about me or brag or boast. I want you to see what's real. So I've been with the company for 16 months. In those 16 months, I've personally been responsible for 39 agents joining the company. Those 39 have went out and got whatever that is, 156. There's 194 agents in the revenue share group. The office that I left had 130 agents. So I'm bigger than the whole office just in 16 months. My revenue share check last month was $12,481. I want you to understand something. I spent 17 years of my career selling 2,000 homes, going on thousands of listing appointments to amass cash to invest. I invested a little over $2 million in commercial grade real estate, institutional grade real estate, that pays me about $9,500 a month in residual income, like $8,500 to $9,000 a month in residual income. This is bigger than that in 16 months with no money. $12,481 in residual income for the month is the equivalent of like $2.4 million invested at 6%. In order to get that $2.4 million, I would have to gross over $5 million, because I have to pay taxes, store, and live. So this truly is, in my opinion, the biggest wealth opportunity as agents that we will ever have at our disposal, period, end of story. Okay? So that is what revenue sharing is, and it's an opportunity that's available to you as an agent. And if you don't want to do it, don't do it. People are like, I don't want to recruit, then don't. Like, that's fine. It's just available to you if you want to use it. Now, for those agents who are like, hey man, I just want to sell real estate, great. We will help you to become as productive as you possibly can. And we'll help you to sell as much real estate as you possibly can, because we're going to get into the value stack. I'll let Jose do that. Before I do that though, I want to show you one of our senior partners. So Lars Hedenberg, he was a top agent, did $2.6 million in GCI, only worked in that business 50 days a year. He was with another company, owned part of an office, switched over to EXP. In the time frame that he has, this is an old slide. He has over 1,500 agents. Look at that number. That's an actual number. It's $85,000 a year. Excuse me, a month.
A month.
That's not a year. That's a month. Because again, this is YouTube for agents. It's the same thing. It's revenue sharing. Okay. And that is $20 million invested at 6%. That's the opportunity that's available to us. Okay. And I'm very appreciative that Glenn provided that to us. Now, for those agents who say to me, well, I don't want to do that. Fine, then don't. Now, we've created an ecosystem where all you have to do is invite people to what we're doing. Invite them to a webinar, invite them to live events, and we'll help you do that. But if you don't want to do it, don't. It's cool. You want to sell real estate? Great. Well, what if there was a way that other than just pieces of plastic, at the end of your working year, you would have something else to show for the time that you spent? And a barbecue at the end of the year. So what EXP does is they're a Fortune 600 company. Most people don't know this, okay? Excuse me, an S&P 600 company. S&P 500 are the 500 most successful large cap companies in the United States, financially most successful. It's an index. The S&P 600 is the 600 most successful mid cap companies in the United States. This is purely economic driven. You cannot politic your way in. You can't pay your way in. If you fit the economic criteria, they let you in. If you don't, they kick you out. We were let in 2 or 3 months ago. We have $140+ million in the bank. We are debt free, and a stock pays a dividend, and we are profitable in this marketplace. One of only 2 companies that are actually profitable in this marketplace. Okay. And it's because of the model, because the 2 most expensive things in business are space and staff. If you can run a company of 90,000 agents with like 60, 100 employees, that's very profitable. And if you get rid of $40,000 to $50,000 a month of expenses, also very profitable. And then what they're doing is pouring that out to the agents. Okay. If you want to know more about that, check out Michael Del Priest's write-up on it. It's pretty fascinating, where he goes through all of the different models and who's making money and who's not. So, but they give you 6 different ways to earn equity. Okay. If you sell a property every year in your calendar year, they give you $200 in equity. If you bring somebody to the company and they sell a property, happens one time, you get $400 in equity. If you do 80,000 in commissions plus 20 transactions on top, they'll give you half of your $16,000 cap back in stock every single year, $8,000 in equity every year that you do that. If you do 80,000 in GCI plus 20 transactions on top, you teach some classes in their online university, and you go to a couple EXP events a year, they'll give you the full $16,000 back in stock every single year that you do that. And they allow you to use 5% of your commissions to buy stock at a 10% discount. Real companies do that. If you had a corporate job with like Gillette or like, Nike, that's what they do. They allow their employees, it's a perk for working at the company. They allow their employees to use a percentage of their pay to buy stock at a discount. Okay. So this screen I'm just showing with you that this is real, because when I started having conversations with people, they would give me all this horse shit about it. Oh, it's not real. It's not making money and blah, blah, blah. It's very difficult to get accurate information from people who have a financial incentive for you not to understand something. And remember, people don't want what's best for you. They want the version of you that's best for them. Okay. So as I was having a conversation with people, they were telling me all these things, and I go back to Jose and he's like, nah, bro. They'd be like, hey, yeah, I heard that, like, it takes a while to get paid. And Jose's like, nah, bro, I'm getting paid right away. Like, hey, man, that rib share thing is not real. And he's like, nah, man, that's actually real. So this equity, I want you to see that it's real. So I've been with the company 16 months. I did the 80,000 in commissions plus 20 transactions on top. So I received a stock award for $8,000. And I also have partners that have sold property, right? So I received a $400 award there. So just in awards that I've been awarded, that portfolio is currently worth about $30,000+. My cap's only $16,000, guys. Most of you guys are with companies that the more deals you do, you have to pay them more money. I'm with a company that the more deals I do, the more money they pay me. And the more I help the company grow, they pay me. And they treat me like an owner. I've also used 5% of my commissions to buy stock at a discount. Hell yeah, I see you, Jose. $500. I've used my commissions to buy stock at a discount, and that's currently worth, as you can see here, around $39,000. So the portfolio is like $71,000. Now, ask yourself a question: am I doing anything different than what I was doing before? Nothing, guys. I was with a company for 15 years, the top agent. I own part of the office. When I left that company, how much money do you think I left with? Here's the answer: fucking nothing. A pat on the back and a hat, and what Jose's holding in his hand, some pieces of plastic.
Aaron, would you rather have 18th place commissions earned in California in 2017 for the whole state, or $32,000?
That's right. It's simple, bro. Look, when people say to me, I find it so interesting. They hold it up on Instagram. It's like, this was a tough year for me, but this makes it all worth it. I'm like, what's funny, bro? Yours came with nothing. Mine came with $8,000. Right? So for those, and think about this. How long do you plan on selling real estate for? 10 more years, 15 more years? If I'd have been doing this for 15 years, I would have $1 million in equity. Instead, I left with hats and t-shirts and pieces of plastic. Hey, Jose, look at me. Here's what I got for $1 million in GCI. Over $1 million. You ready? Look, piece of plastic.
Same thing here.
Yep, just like this. See that, guys?
16th place. 18th place for the entire state.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, walk that into the grocery store and see if they'll take that. You know what I mean? So ask yourself a question. Which seems more realistic? For you to earn gross and save over $4.8 to $7.2 million in the next 20, 30 years, or attract 10 to 15 agents to the company within the next 2 or 3? The answer is obvious, right? What would be easier, more realistic? So what comes with partnership? Because anybody can provide you access to the brokerage firm. The question is, what are they offering you above and beyond just access? Okay. So we've been very intentional and purposeful and strategic to create a value stack that, in my opinion, is unmatched. Okay. World-class instruction from world-class operators. So what I provide to the value stack, I have a coaching company, 100 coaching clients, 12 of which make over $1 million a year. And 75% of all the coaching and training that I provide becomes free to our partners and anybody that they partner with. Okay. So I do a call once a week. It's about 40 agents on that call, which is with me personally on Wednesdays. And ask yourself a question. If you're here in the room, if you hung out, let's say, if you were on a call with me for a week, once a week for an hour, how would that affect your production? Do you think you would get better skills? Do you think you would get a better mindset? You think I would have better systems? The answer is of course. So that call is via Zoom once a week, and agents pay $250 a month to be on that call, and that call becomes free to you and anybody that you bring to the company. Okay. I also have two role play groups, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. 7:30 role play and 11:30. The one in the afternoon is just for the listing presentation. The one in the morning is just for setting appointments. Agents pay about $85 a month to be in both of those groups. That becomes free to you and free to anybody that you bring to the company. We handle all the scheduling. We handle, all the kind of back end side. Role play partners rotate once a week, so you get different people and different kind of styles and things of that nature. I have two separate mastermind groups, one for agents doing $250 to $500 a year in GCI. There's about 10, 12 agents in that. They pay $400 a month for a 45-minute call with me once a week. That becomes free to you and free to anybody that you bring to the company. I also have a mastermind group that Jose's in called the Freedom Builders. Agents have to do $750 plus a year in gross commission income to be in that group. About 10, 12 agents in that group. They pay money to be on that call. And I also do live events for them. So once you fit that criteria, the call becomes free to you. The events aren't free, but the call becomes free to you and anybody that you bring to the company. Now, what's also true is that whoever me and Jose have proximity to, you immediately have proximity to. So Jose has, and I'll let him share with you what he's offering as far as the value stack is concerned.
Got it. So similar to Aaron, I have a once a week call that you guys get access to, where it's basically called an Ask Me Anything Mastermind. I can teach you guys anything about social. Over probably 400 and 500,000 followers on all platforms. I could teach you guys how to buy rentals. I own 57 rentals for a $15 million value in the portfolio. I can teach you guys how to sell real estate in high volume. All that is included in the Ask Me Anything Mastermind. On top of that, I have a university called Morales Group University, where every training that I've ever done with either agents, people that work with me is uploaded into that university. You guys have 24/7 access to that. And you can basically listen in to any live recordings that we've ever done. And it's organized by the different sections. So for example, if you want to learn about the listing presentation, there's listing presentation recording on there, and you can go in there at any time, including there are some live conversations with some clients as well too, for expires, probates, for sale by owners, for rent by owners. So I wish I would have had access to something like this when I got started, because it basically gives you guys the ability to shadow me for the last 5 to 7 years and see real life conversations in real situations about how to handle each of the different objections that you guys heard here today.
Love that. And it's super valuable. Everybody who's plugged into it has had nothing but good things to say about it. And then also our senior partner, Lars. So Lars, we were sharing that he, top agent, 2.6 million in GCI, only worked in that business 50 days a year. He wrote a book called Scale or Die. And then he created a coaching company called Real Estate B School to teach people how to scale. And a lot of people who do high units that you see on panels, they've been through Real Estate B School. And what he provides for the value stack is he has an online university of Real Estate B School, which has screenshots, screen records, PDFs, and videos of him teaching you, walking you through step by step how to grow and scale a business. Anything you could possibly need to do that, from hiring to how to hold an open house to, marketing and things of that nature. And he charges agents $900 a month to have access to that. That also becomes free to you and free to anybody that you bring to the company. So again, we've been very, very intentional, where we can give you access to individuals that are multi-millionaires in the real estate space, probably 6,000 homes sold amongst them that you would normally have to pay thousands of dollars a month to have access to. And it becomes free to you and free to anybody that you join to the company. And the only reason that's possible is because of the model, because the model allows us to reverse it, right? So what's happened is before this, there wasn't a model that encouraged, incentivized agents to collaborate and share. Because if you think about this, right, in your company, wherever you're at, how often do you get to talk to the top producers? Probably never, because they're not incentivized to help you. Where here in this model, you are incentivized, right? So now I can open it up and give everything away so you can be as productive as possible, okay? And that's why we're so excited about this opportunity, because me and Jose really have a heart for doing that. So one of two things happen at this point in the conversation. Okay. Once people see this, because my experience is if you're hardworking, ambitious, and smart, once you see this, you cannot unsee it. Okay. Warren Buffett has a saying, there's only few things that you can sufficiently explain to a virgin with words. Mm-hmm. Once you've experienced this, you're not going to be able to unsee it, right? So two things happen. One is people are like, holy smokes, that makes perfect sense to me. I love the value stack. I love the instruction. I got a taste of it today. I see that it's real. It's the truth. This is coming from people that have sold real estate in high volume. And I can get high-level coaching and instruction from world-class operators in the space for free. Plus I get equity, plus the rev share opportunity. Like, I'm ready to start onboarding right now. And if that's you, and somebody invited you to this call that individual who invited you to this call, or text them or get in contact with them like, yo, I'm ready to start onboarding right now. Okay. The second person, they say to themselves, well, this all makes sense. I don't want to speak to my significant other, maybe pray about it, think about it. Maybe I'll watch some more material. And that's cool too. Whatever you decide will support you 100%. The question to be asking yourself in your mind is, what would be a next step that you would feel comfortable with? Okay. And the question you should be asking yourself in your mind is, am I going to sit back and watch as EXP completely disrupts the real estate industry, or am I going to participate? Me and Jose made the decision to participate. What's also true for me and Jose is we are 1,000% committed to adding tremendous value, as much value as we possibly can, to help you guys to be as productive as you possibly can be. And it truly would be a privilege and a pleasure to partner with you. So with that, I want to say thank you again for the opportunity. I'm so glad you were here. Drop in the chat if this was fire, if you got more value today than you normally would get from any meeting that you've been in with real estate, or whatever office you're at.
Awesome.
That's what's up. Fire and brimstone. So I appreciate you, Jose. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I would just say that we're 100% committed to helping you guys. If you guys just want to focus on production, we're all about that, So if you guys just want to grow your businesses, I don't think that there's two better people to help you guys grow your businesses. I know that we can help you become top listing agents. So that is our
intention. So we appreciate you. You, my friend, my brother from another mother. I'm going to see you on Sunday. Look forward to it. Anybody going out to EXPCon, be sure to say what's up to me and Jose. DM us. We can connect, meet you face to face. Let's go. Let's grow. Elite Builders Coast to Coast.
Do it.
You actually paid other agents over $120,000 in referral fees in one calendar year?
I did that. It was great to